It's 100 years now. They've had the 100-year celebration of the Downs being at Spittal Farm. My granddad bought it. He was renting a farm off a neighbour. Then this came up through the Fortescue estate, 215 acres. So my granddad borrowed the money, bought it, and 2,000 some odd pound, whatever it was at the time, which seems a ridiculous amount of money now for two houses and all the acres and the land and the building. But
so in your granddad's day, the farming would have been very different. I mean, did you ever hear tales from him of how it was done?
I spent a lot of time with my granddad. He died when I was 15, but my little treat on a Sunday morning when I was 9, 10 or 11, we'd go off in a van, he'd let me drive. So that was my granddad's. He didn't tell my dad or my mum, but we'd go off with a van somewhere and I'd drive. And you drive, you'd be all right. And we'd sit and chat and he'd tell me that when he bought the farm and what it cost him and all the issues and problems he had. And there was literally, they had nothing, no amenities, no electric. There was very minimal. They just lived off growing potatoes and a totally different top, which you can hard to imagine. And for my children to understand that there wasn't a McDonald's on the corner and there wasn't a takeaway, you just ate what you got and survived off of that. And that they got through it. And are still here today, which is, but they don't know any different. I think it's part of the knowing what's available and what's not there, isn't it?
And all in those days would have been horse-powered or man-powered.
Yeah. At that time, my granddad had two favourite horses, Captain and Prince, which he loved talking about. And Prince was a little bit lazy, so if you put two of them in to tow a plough, he said, Prince, you'd have to give him a little prod because he's a bit lazy. He'd let Captain do all the hard work, so you'd give little Prince just a little to keep up, and then he'd slack off again. Captain was quite happy to do the work, but Prince was a bit more lazy. But setting up was like hour and a half in the morning, get them all ready, get them going, and then go off to the field and be out there all day. But you could plough an acre a day. That was if you did an acre a day, that was fantastic. Well, they do 30 acres a day now with a tractor, no problem, like batting an eyelid in a nice warm air-conditioned seat. Where with the horses, you had to walk with it. You had no choice. And my uncle, he had a farm on Exmoor. He used to, I'd plough to the blood run out my laces, he said. That was his favourite saying. So it's just, I can hear him saying that. And when he started on a farm, he's 15, he said, I got paid, my pay packet, and it fell out of my pocket and it fell in the ploughshare, he saare. Never found it, he said. Just got paid a week's pay, he said. Put it in my pocket. Boss come, then I was ploughing and, well, it's in the ploughshare somewhere along there. But yeah, so that was at the time, they didn't know any different, did they? So
someone might turn that up one day.
Or it could be a pay packet with 7 shillings and sixpence in there. But they used to employ like 7 or 8 staff at the time. Even though they bought the farm, my father had 7 workmen when he came home originally, and now it's just back to my brother. But I can go on for hours about the history and the whooping cough.
Well, give me a little flavour of that, because that was a big issue, wasn't it, the whooping cough?
It was absolutely massive, because at the time, Grandad never came out of the house. His wife died of it, his daughter died of it, so it was horrendous. And Fred Eyre, another local character, used to work on the farm at the time. He talked about it as well, that they never come out of the house for 2 or 3 months because of the whooping cough. And then he lost his eldest daughter, 13. And then his wife died of it as well, and my dad was only 7. So it was through that time, through the early 40s, it was a very rough time. My dad was 7-year-old. There was, and my Auntie Muriel then took on, basically she was 10 or 11, took on the duties of the mum, brought up my dad and his brother. They were 7 and 10 at the time, so she took on that. Grandad then had a housekeeper come in to help out, she'd help out. But it was very tough times at the time. But Fred Eyre used to love the housekeepers, because he'd be in to be a young housekeeper, and then Fred would very often pop in and make sure they were okay, bless him. And there's a story that Grandad went to market, so Fred, as soon as Grandad went off with his Morris Oxford or Morris 11, whatever, had sneaked off to market, Fred would be in to make sure the housekeeper was okay. And Grandad forgot his wallet, so he came back in, and Fred leapt out the back kitchen window. So it was just quite a deep bank, just quite about a 10-foot drop. But he leapt out the back, and Grandad knew anyway. He knew what was going on, but he knew. But dear, that's another one of Country's characters, isn't it? And